What is going on, beautiful people, and welcome back to the greatest combat sports and culture show in the entire universe, the Fight Podcast. So, we were supposed to start a little earlier. I've had a couple things going on, man, this morning, but we finally got it. We're here, we're ready, and as always, I'm here to bring you guys amazing content. So, today on the show, man, what better way to get the weekend cracking than having the guru coming and joining us once again on the Fight Podcast. As you guys know, Brandon Camille, man, B-Cam thinks he's coming on the show today. We're going to go ahead and discuss so many different things. We're going to go ahead and discuss, obviously, the state of boxing, what's happening with boxing. We're also going to go ahead and talk about, man, in this time of quarantine, people have been on these Twitter fingers, man. So we have to talk about all of the beef that's been going on in the world of boxing during this lockdown. We're going to talk about that, Floyd Mayweather, top promoters in the game, and so much more, man. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on my brother from another mother, Brandon, B-Cam, Camille, the guru, right here on the Fight Podcast. Brandon, what up, brother?
Yes, sir. Serg, thanks for having me once again. Happy to be back.
Man.
Everything is everything, you know. We've been staring at these four walls. Getting pretty exciting in here.
Hey, well, I can let you know, man. Like, we've been doing this for a while, and bro, your connection looks crystal clear, man. You're looking fresh, bro.
Oh, courtesy of my job, nice people let me expense an Ethernet cable. So now, we are doing this in HD from now on. No more games. None of that Wi-Fi stuff. I'm taking it back. See, taking it back old school.
Hey, man, I love it, brother. I love it, man. Well, dude, I've asked everybody this, and again, you've been joining me on the show, dude, for a little bit over a year now, man. People don't know, man. So we're getting you up and rocking. How have you been holding up over these last? You were on episode 200. Shout out to Two Bills. It's 208. We're keeping it rocking, bruh. How you been holding up?
I won't lie to you. Last week has been a little bit rough. I think I was just settling into quarantine and just like cutting myself off from the outside world. And I was just so on edge. And I took some time to speak to a couple of my friends this week. Just had some real good conversations, just like chilling with the homies like you would normally do, but we don't get to do. So after that conversation, I was just like, wow, like I was feeling crazy for a little bit. And so, and I almost didn't even realize it. But yeah, so it was a bit of an interesting week, but I'm feeling back on steady ground after this week. And just like, I'm settling into my own quarantine zone like everybody else. So I feel like everybody's going through their own little phases. I've gone through mine. I'm sure you've had your own. I've seen, you and Tosh posting day-long tapes on Instagram.
Hey, man, we have a good time, man. Like we've called her before, man, the first lady of the Fight Podcast, man. She and I have a great time, keeping ourselves entertained in this quarantine, man. So, and I really, man, you really look at it.
Yeah, man, I'm like,
Go ahead. No, brother, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, man, I'm good. I was like, bro. I was just talking about it. I was like, yo, did Serg leak a sex tape on Instagram? Where's it going? Just
No, man, none of that, man. None of that. We're not going that way, man.
Get a few followers.
Hey, man, we get more than a couple followers, man. We get it popping. Man, speaking of that, I don't know if you've heard about this. Rapping Combat, friend of the show, man, one of our brothers. He's come on and he was telling me about this. Have you ever heard of Twitter, Wrestling Twitter After Dark?
Nah, but I'm big into wrestling, so I'd be seeing stuff.
Wrestling also?
I don't know. You knew this.
I didn't know how. Are you
knew
deep
this.
into wrestling?
I'm like, okay, like I follow wrestling. I follow wrestling storylines. Like I don't usually watch stuff live, but I typically keep up what's going on. I got a little combat sports group me with you. I have a wrestling group me that I don't check as often, but I know a little something.
We have to have a show. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right before I call, I was actually watching, I think it's called The Dark Side of Something. It's the Vice documentary on Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. The Dark Side of the Ring. Yeah. So I was literally just watching that on YouTube before I jumped on the call. while I was trying to take some time to eat my little meal. I try to appreciate the small things.
You have
But,
to.
yeah, I am into wrestling. Just enough. I can have a conversation.
All right, so check it out. And the reason I bring this up, you're talking about sex tapes. Fam.
Where are we going?
Wrestling Twitter After Dark. Last time, Ernest of Rapping Combat was on the show, and he was like, Serg, it's bananas. You need to check it out. Bro, we turned this on. I clicked onto it. Dude, tomfoolery on all accounts. It's crazy. You have people out there, I'm talking about literally out there showing their ass. And I don't know if they're getting any extra Twitter followers. So at the end of the day, I don't know if that actually works.
I can't speak to it. I have not seen Wrestling Twitter After Dark. I can speak to storylines, what's going on, in-ring performances, but I cannot speak to some I guess, hashtag that I haven't seen yet. But next week I'll have a review for you. Right. I'll let you know what's going on.
All right. Well, look, check it out, man. It has been, as we both know, a quiet time in combat sports. Dana White isn't trying to have it be a quiet time, but everybody else is trying to shut it down. Uncle Dana's out there on some, and I don't know if anybody else knows this, but a birdie told me. So we've all heard of Dana White and how he's actually purchasing an island, yes, for the fight.
Correct.
Do you know it's Epstein's Island?
That island? I did not know that.
It is that island.
I mean, granted, it's still an island. Like, none of that's going on there anymore. So, I mean, if you want to repurpose it for something else, then...
Bruh.
I mean...
We're talking about Dana White, Trump's buddy. He's been known to have tomfoolery. Man, that island is going to be... I'm not going to lie. It's going to be lit on that island.
I mean... Do you think they're going to get it done?
Yes.
You think how? And when you say you think, you have what percentage of confidence?
98%.
98% that this will happen, even after it got pushed back already.
No, oh, you talking about the event on May 9th?
Yes.
I am 80% sure.
80%.
80%.
You don't want to bump that down to 70.
80.
Okay.
I'm 80%, and the reason I'm 80% sure on that one.
Right. That's a nice solid percentage.
Oh, no, dude. I don't... I put it like this. The way that... If we look at this, right? And we've talked about Florida. And I'm not going to stunt. Yo, Florida. I love you guys. Y'all wild down there in Florida, man. It is nuts. You got people out there already on beaches. They've opened up beaches while the rest of us are locked in our four walls. They're out there in beaches. But Florida has named WWE... a necessary component, right? It's one of those. So we have them being a necessary entity.
Did you see anything that happened with that?
With which aspect of it?
Florida considering WWE an essential activity?
Yeah, I've been looking into and reading. So go ahead, please.
The same. I'm not a political guy, but the same day that happened, I know you are a political guy. That's why I know that you would like this. And that's why I was surprised you didn't do it. You didn't see this at all. The same day that Florida announced that WWE was considered an essential activity, Linda McMahon, who would be the wife of Vince McMahon, did somewhat of a $19 million donation to a pro-Trump super PAC. Or something of that sort. I don't have all the details, but that did happen on the same day. Somewhat of like a $19 million donation. Yep. So, of coincidences, that would be a big one. That's probably not a coincidence.
Did you know that Dana White and Vince McMahon are on Donald Trump's board of advisors in opening the country back up?
I would not be surprised.
Yes, we literally have circus wranglers running the country. It's crazy. It is nuts. Bruh. It is like...
I don't...
Fam, we got carnies out there. Straight carnies.
Yeah, I don't... It's tough. I don't know what... We don't know what happens behind closed doors, because a lot of people didn't make that correlation to what happened with the Linda McMahon and the WWE being, quote-unquote, essential. So, I mean, you kind of got to pay attention. Depends who you follow. They might make it for you. You know, Twitter, a nice Twitter thread always tell you what's going on.
1000%.
But lots of crazy things going on behind the scenes. But I mean, guys, let's be real. Y'all stay safe.
Please.
Stay inside. We are not rich white men, so we don't get to make dumb decisions like everybody else. So let's make the smart decision and just stay at home.
Stay in the crib, man. Stay in the crib. Well, here's the thing, man. We do have some news that I definitely want to talk about. We're going to talk about a litany of things today. Obviously, you know, you and I always...
Hold on. Tosh, this is the one day that Tosh is watching that I joke about you guys leaking sex tape.
Hey, man, that's one thing I've always known. Dog, she's always watching, bro.
I was moving with the impression that she didn't listen to the show. This is what you told me.
Oh, man. Bro. We're out. Hey, it is what it is, man. And like I said, anybody who's listening, for friends and everything, and we will eventually stream this on. This will be on YouTube. But tell your friends, tell everybody about Hot Mic, man. The Hot Mic app is phenomenal. What they're doing. Apply promo code Sergio, and we can get you on this free. This is free content, you guys. Go out there, check us out, man, and you can get more fire conversations like this and so much more, man. But B, let's talk about some fighting, man. And since we were talking about these circus wranglers, let's talk about it. Since we're already talking about these circus wranglers, let's talk about promoters for a hot second. I had a great opportunity. I had Rick Ramos on the podcast. And Rick Ramos, as we know, is the head trainer of Jessica McCaskill, who is the only world champion boxer that Chicago actually has. So the reason I went ahead and I actually want to bring that up is because he had a really interesting point. And you and I go back and forth on this. We talk about the greatest promoters in the game of boxing. And we always talk about a handful of people in particular. Now, we're going to go ahead and leave Top Rank out of this equation for a hot second. But what I do want to talk about is Al Haymon, and I want to talk about Eddie Hearn. I asked Rick, who do you feel is leading the charge in terms of pretty much staying on top of, because the pay-per-view model is going to be dead. The pay-per-view model, you and I have discussed this back and forth. We think that's eventually going down the way. Rick Ramos says that Al Haymon is a dinosaur. And not only is he a dinosaur, he is not adapting the way he needs to, and he is falling behind Eddie Hearn. Now, he might be biased. Eddie Hearn signs his checks. Do you believe in what we've seen with DAZN, what we've seen with PBC? Is Rick right?
I believe it's very easy for Rick to say that. I believe Al Haymon moves behind the shadows, as we know. There's barely any pictures of this man, whereas Eddie Hearn is doing Instagram live chats and constantly engaging with his users every day. So the appearance would tell you that maybe Eddie Hearn is moving in the right direction and maybe Al Haymon is not. However, one thing we know about Al Haymon is just because we don't see it does not mean it's not happening. He still has extremely relevant fighters, including young guys that are coming up as well. He does have a deal where he has to deliver 4 pay-per-views a year. So while pay-per-view may seemingly pay-per-view is going down, however, that's a conversation I want to have with you today. Why pay-per-view numbers are down, and we can speak about that a little bit more as well. But I think if they can, it's not more about how they're building the fighters rather than the idea that pay-per-view is dead. And it's always, and I'm a fan of Eddie Hearn. I know you've said that you're not the biggest fan of Eddie Hearn. I like how he's open. I like how he engages with his users. I like how he engages with his fighters from what we can see. And I like the fact that we can see that. I like that transparency because I paid my $20 a month to DAZN like everybody else. So I do like that transparency. However, I've always been a fan of Al, and I'm not ready to step away from that yet until I see a consistent, hey, Al Haymon fighters aren't getting it, are struggling in some way, shape, or form. And that's absolutely something that even his lower level fighters don't seem to do. So I have no reason to question Al Haymon, his methods, and his avenues of promotion. Partnering with Fox is no small feat. You know, you promote your fighters on an app,
Yep.
a concept which I'm a huge fan of. However, you don't have a partnership with Fox. Fox can put huge muscle. There were Super Bowl spots for Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. That's something that they've never done in history.
But we also
That's
have
just
to,
2 months ago.
But we also have to realize that that was big on ESPN, and that's Top Rank. It was Top Rank. If it was on Fox.
That was the Al Heyman side of things, because the Super Bowl is on Fox.
Very true. But I mean, it was a shared event though. And again, I'm not just out there just riding for Buddy, right? We also have to realize and understand that at the end of the day, that was a co-promoted event. Anything that has to do with ESPN, they're gonna put out there. ESPN's gonna put that money up if they want to get those eyes. You know what I'm saying? They're the worldwide leader for a reason, and they're the ones that rock with Top Rank. So for me, I'm looking at that, and I sit there and say, yes, I can see Al Heyman having a part of that. But I really see Top Rank and ESPN going out there. And again, it's a co-promotion, right? But I feel you with that one, I do. But you're right. You are right in terms of what Eddie Hearn is doing, and I do agree with Rick in terms of what I've seen, for instance, with Eddie Hearn. He's at least putting himself out there. And we all know, Buddy moves in the shadows. But the way the world is working currently, remember, like I said, we look at the difference in athletes, we look at the differences in generations. You have to be in forefront. You have to put yourself out there. And the way the zone is rocking and the way everything he's doing with his athletes, even the fact that he's bringing, he's getting big names. Jacobs, Devin Haney. He's getting these names that are actually have some type of appeal, and he's bringing them on the other side. Golden Boy Canelo. I have to say, and it really looks that, Eddie Hearn is the one doing the work right now. He seems like he's the one, and not only that, and we really shit on this in the past, but you really also have to think about what he did in terms of, we didn't like it, but with the video gamers, those dudes, with Logan Paul and them.
Oh.
I mean, I talked to Rick about this also. He was like, I was at that event. He was like, it was packed for those guys, even though we had world champions lined up. He's like, Eddie knows what he's doing. So if I'm looking at it and talking about throwing that really casting that wide net, I really believe that Eddie does have the advantage at this present moment in time.
I think he's doing a good job of casting a wide net, but there's only so far that net is going to be cast. While he's making an attempt, he's still on an app compared to the reach of a network like Fox and its core and its partners. They're still doing stuff with Showtime. So right now, while DAZN may be making more progress than, let's say, a PBC, Al Heyman still is very far in the lead. Mm-hmm. And he still dominates one of the the glamour division in boxing for at least the last 20 to 30 years, which is the welterweight division.
Let's keep it a buck. Al Heyman runs all the brothers in boxing, okay?
Not necessarily, but he does.
Oh, the majority. A solid 80%.
I'm looking through a lot of champions right now. And Caleb Plant.
And Caleb Plant.
I'm looking through a list of all the champions right now, and he doesn't dominate as much as he once did.
He did at one point in time,
especially towards the higher weight class.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, he still has his guys. He has the Charlo brothers, Derevyanchenko. I mean, it's a ton of guys. The whole welterweight division.
We had obviously Caleb Plant, the entire welterweight division. He's a monster, and I'm not taking anything away from either guy. And the reason we're talking about the two of these guys, these are by far, two of the top 3 promoters in boxing, and we can both agree on that. Now, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm going to say this. I do have a small issue with Al Heyman. I believe
Speak on it.
That Eddie Hearn has a bit more. He cares a little bit more about the sport of boxing than Al Heyman does. I feel like Al Heyman is a lot more about the numbers. He's a lot more about creating financial freedom for his fighters, and not always about making the best fights for the sport of boxing. Not always about growing the sport of boxing. I think he has a lot more of his duty to his fighters than he does the fans or growing the actual sport. And so this was something that Chris spoke about a couple. when you speak about pay-per-view being dead or not, it's a direct function of how boxing runs the sport compared to a sport like MMA.
Right.
It's very difficult to understand how a fight of the magnitude of Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, 800,000 buys.
Right.
We're going into that fight, seeing that there were things like Super Bowl spots, things we had never seen before, a truly well done promotion by two behemoths in Fox and ESPN. That seems crazy, and it's easy to look at that and say, "Hey, pay-per-view is dead."
Okay.
Right? But the guys that were doing those big pay-per-view numbers, it wasn't their first time doing big pay-per-views like that. Not at all. This was Deontay Wilder's first big pay-per-view like that. If he wants to dominate, if either him or Tyson Fury wants to do these big pay-per-view numbers and actually prove that pay-per-view isn't dead, well, they need to be doing this fight in and fight out, making these big fights and these big events. And that's what fighters don't do today. They try to build their record, making these highlights Instagram while they're not fighting top competition. Then they step up in competition. They want to fight on pay-per-view, but you haven't built yourself. You haven't fought against any other champions. Now you want to be on pay-per-view. You want people to pay for you, and now you don't understand why people are not buying your pay-per-view.
I have to say something, man.
Let these fighters fight.
I have to say something, and not to cut you off, brother. You sound like you've been hanging out with me for a while.
Well,
you sound, go ahead, man, because you sound like you've been making my argument for me that I've been making with you for the last year.
Well, I'm just being serious. I mean, if that's gonna be the case, then you have to be content with building your sport and promotions on regular TV.
Facts.
But don't continue to give us Tank against a scrub, Tank against a scrub, Tank against a scrub, Tank against a scrub. Oh, now we're gonna put Tank on pay-per-view against Leo Santa Cruz, and we're gonna pray that people want to see that. We don't fucking want to see that, nor do we want to pay for it.
See that shit.
We want to see Tank in real fights. We want to see Tank against Ryan Garcia. We want to see Tank against Devin Haney. We want to see Tank against Vasily Lomachenko. We want to see Tank against Gary Russell Jr. Those are the things we want to see. We don't necessarily want to see Tank against a scrub and now it's Tank on pay-per-view. Build your fighters over time.
Yep.
Let them fight these. Yep. Let them fight these dogs while they're young.
Yep.
Let them take their losses while they're young, so they can figure the game out and they can really build themselves and be a true pay-per-view stars later in their career.
Now, do you think that is in specific?
That's what it has to be.
So, do you think that's predominantly because of Al Heyman, or is that more Floyd Mayweather that's stopping Gervonta Davis specifically from actually moving up?
I think Al Heyman is like, we can fight this guy and take this risk, or we can continue to pad we can fight this guy and take this risk for $1 million, or we could take a few more fights against lesser competition. You're gonna make $300,000-$400,000, which isn't as big as that $1 million payday, but we're gonna make sure that we can pad your accounts, set you up for a financial future before we start heading into those big fights, and then we're gonna start to try to cash out. But Al Heyman didn't come around for Floyd Mayweather until some of these tough fights already.
Absolutely.
And so he's already of a well-known commodity once Al Heyman came around. Al Heyman, he helped take in the height that we never thought of. So I think it's just a financial thing for Al. I do think he does great by his fighters, which is why I love to see fighters sign with him, because no one likes to see guys who have been in such little sport at the end of their career. They can't walk, they can't move, they can't think. And if that's the state they're going to be in, I at least want to make sure that they're set up for financial success for the rest of their life. Cool. But Eddie Hearn, I think he actually cares about the sport of boxing. He cares about putting on big, memorable events. And that's one thing I do like about Eddie Hearn. And, for a while he was 20. I think that's finally starting to slow down a bit, and that's going to happen. But it seems like Eddie Hearn cares way more about building these events than Al Heyman does. And that's one thing I don't like as much about Al Heyman is I think he does it personally. I think he does it for the finances, not for the success of the sport.
Okay. Well, I want to move on from these guys a little bit, and we did mention, for instance, Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather, who, again, shout out to him, man, and we've been hard on Floyd from time to time, but he's been dealing with a lot recently. The loss of Roger Mayweather and his uncle, as well as his kids, his children's mom, and how one of his kids' mom is out here stabbing NBA young boys' baby moms. That's crazy. We'll talk about that another day. But
do we get a music segment? Do we get a music segment at all?
We'll talk about music tonight.
Today?
Yeah, hell yeah. 1000%. We'll rock that out.
Okay.
Come on, fam. This is combat sports and culture, the greatest in the universe, man. We have to talk about culture. You know what I'm saying?
I just got to make sure we're on the same page. I've been off for about 8 episodes. I don't know what's going on.
I feel you. All right, so let me ask you this: Floyd Mayweather, man, to honor his uncle, he really wants to start training, and he believes he has the ability to be the greatest trainer of all time. He's starting to work with his kids a little bit, and you were seeing some film and some footage coming out. I'm gonna say this about it. A lot of people look at it, and we look at a lot of greats, and they're saying like some of the greats don't do a great job of teaching, right? We always hear that kind of adage. People say that. If Floyd Mayweather realistically can take his ego out of it, which I don't know if it's possible, but if he can take his ego off of it and actually put the same type of work and diligence, he could legitimately become, I think, a really solid trainer. I think he really understands the game. I think he absolutely knows how to mentor, and he's been a great mentor to a litany of amazing boxers. If he really wanted to do it, I think he can be a very quality trainer. Do I think it's gonna happen? Man, this is a coin flip for me. Because part of me thinks that, nah, but I'm gonna say yes because of this and this alone. He's getting to the point that he's in his mid-40s. He, in his own self, understands that he can't compete anymore to the ability that he wants to, but he can keep himself in the public eye. He can keep himself in the mix if he becomes a legit-ass trainer. So if this is the key for him to continue making cash and growing in the future, I don't see why he can't do it.
So, how can we talk about Mayweather being a trainer because
without talking about
no
what?
one is going to ever doubt. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. What were you saying?
Can you hear me? We good?
No, I hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay. We can't talk about Floyd Mayweather without talking about his ego. And the first thing you said is ego aside. There is no ego aside with Floyd Mayweather. Now we know what the man does in the ring. A boxing genius. No one when's the last time you've ever heard someone question Floyd's boxing IQ?
Never.
That's something that just doesn't happen. Let's talk about something else, because Floyd has it. But his ego is what could get in the way. When somebody can't perform to his standard, think people can't do it, he did. When he has to take a loss because every fighter will not be an undefeated fighter. How does he handle that? How does he coach a guy? How does he coach a guy's mentality to be in a position that he doesn't even can't fathom himself? And he has lost in the amateurs, but I mean, Floyd's ego is the thing that we could see taking this whole project as a trainer and taking it off the train tracks. Because I do believe the boxing IQ is there. Yeah, we saw some videos on him on IG with his son, but that's his son. What happens when you get a fighter that isn't yours?
We've also seen him mentor some guys who speak glowingly of him as an educator in the sport. Devin Haney speaks so highly of him as an educator in the sport. Shakur Stevenson, I've heard speak highly of him as an educator in the sport. Rolly has talked about him. You know what I'm saying? I'm going into like Gervonta Davis, obviously. These are guys that Spain, and again, we don't know. We don't know if this is him just trying to keep his name in the news. But I'm talking about if we look at it, if he puts the same, because this is all hypothetical.
So hold on. What would those guys still mention him if he wasn't Floyd Mayweather? Because all of the guys that you mentioned get a benefit from associating themselves with Floyd Mayweather. So if he was just a random guy And you're saying he's
But
this big.
that's not a good argument because the fact of the matter is he's not a regular guy. He is Floyd Mayweather. So the fact of the matter is, like, yes, we look at it. If we have an opportunity to go out there and this is what we know. We don't know anything else. If he's some other dude, we don't know. He could, if he was another dude, he might possibly be the greatest trainer. We have no clue. And a lot of things people talk about, like you look at Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, because he's such a savage. And we'll talk about real quick if you're going to be checking out the documentary. I know he beat the shit out of your Knicks forever, so maybe you won't be watching it. But you know what I'm saying?
Wow, I come here to support you, just randomly assaulted. Okay.
I'm just saying, you know.
Now I know where we're at.
But Mike might not be a legitimate coach. You know what I'm saying? I obviously, he's not the greatest owner in the world. I don't know when the last time his teams won more than 20 games. So it could be one of the same things in terms of Floyd Mayweather, but hypothetically speaking, because all this is in hypotheticals, we won't know until we actually see him. If I'm looking at it in terms of does he have the opportunity? Does he have the skill set to actually be a great trainer? Yes, 1,000%. He has been around two of the greatest trainers ever his entire life. Fundamentally speaking, Floyd Mayweather knows the X's and O's of boxing better than anybody else out there. If he can actually put it, and again, there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, but if he does actually focus on it, yes, he absolutely could be amazing at it. And that's my only point.
Well, I see your point. I do think the reason why I can see him being good as a trainer outside of his amazing boxing IQ, knowledge of the sport, and his time alongside two of, I don't know if the greatest trainers to ever do it, the greatest trainers with him to ever do it in terms of Roger and Floyd Sr.
But those are two amazing trainers. We can't knock that out. I mean, those are, Floyd Sr. was a standout trainer.
I feel like you got to do it like with more than one fighter. Like how many fights? I know Floyd Sr. coached around a couple guys, but how long did it last?
Hey man, I can just go based on what the fighters at the time have said. He's worked with for an extended period of time with like Oscar De La Hoya, for instance.
I remember that.
And Oscar was like, man, this dude. And
maybe Ricky Hatton too.
Exactly.
I believe
both of them, and both of them his son beat the shit out of. But at the end of the day, man, I look at it and I think that he has the skills to do it. Again, only time will tell. But we will see, man. Which honestly, here's the thing, and I want to move on to the next one because, like I said,
well, I just want to say why I do see this working is because we see Floyd and everything that he does for money. Like this seems like a true passion project.
It does.
He's inspired by the death of his uncle in a different way. They were obviously closer than we could even imagine. That's why I do see this working is because he's tied to the death of his uncle and wants to make his uncle proud and wants to walk in the shadow. And that's not even transparency we've got from Floyd in recent years. So I'm excited to see where this goes, to be honest. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I'm happy to see Floyd putting his energy into something that's just not being flashy and money, like something it
seems positive.
That fulfills him.
It seems positive. And that's, I think, the reason I'm giving it more credence and I'm really trying to make sure I'm out here in essence, kind of supporting Floyd with this one, man, because I've knocked Floyd for a long time. And you know me, I'm not with all the glitz and glamour and shit. I'm not with extracurriculars. I think in that squared circle, he's one of the greatest to ever do it. Outside of it, man, he's just schmuck. If he can go out there, he can literally change his stripes in a very similar way that we look and revere somebody like a Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, when he was still in it, we were like, oh, this motherfucker's wild. Now we look at it, Mike Tyson, now this motherfucker, he got weed companies and he has cartoons and whatnot. Like, that dude is a fan-friendly, family-friendly guy again. This is something that I don't know if it can or cannot, but he can change a Floyd Mayweather with this. But I want to talk about this. There has been some spicy talk out there between fighters in this quarantine. And I'm going to open up the floor to you on this one, okay? There's been some fire ones. We have seen Jermell Charlo, Terrence Crawford going back and forth. We've seen Hooker going back out there with my boy from New Orleans. We have seen even Manny Pacquiao going back and forth with Mikey Garcia. Yo, what is going on with these fighters, man? And which beef are you more interested in?
The only beef that I'm interested in at all is Maurice Hooker and Regis Prograis.
Because they're
That's it.
probably actually going to fight. Let's keep it a buck.
They were
Scheduled to
scheduled.
fight.
They were
Yep.
scheduled to. They were scheduled to fight. The only reason why they have not fought, I
This is quarantine.
believe, it would have
It'd have
been
been this weekend.
this
This weekend,
upcoming
yeah.
weekend, this weekend or next
It would have been
weekend.
this weekend. It would have been this weekend. Yeah.
That would have been a great fight. And I love me some Maurice Hooker. I was a fan of him before the Ramirez fight, and I became such a huge fan of his after the Ramirez fight, which I watched this week.
I
Which we
did
can
as well.
always
I
talk
did
about.
as well, actually,
But
because you actually sent me a note and you were like, "Yo, check this out." I went back and I watched it. Holy shit! What a fight! What a fucking fight!
what a unification.
And two dudes going out there with a unification, going at it. And we can talk about this at some other time, but I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Ramirez versus Taylor, I'm going with Ramirez. I'm just keeping it a buck.
I have to go with Ramirez in that fight because I don't know what Taylor's going to show up as. We saw him show up as a brawler for Regis
Now,
Prograis.
real quick,
I'm
did
not
you hear
quite
about
sure
what
that's going to work with Ramirez.
What Regis Prograis brought up, and I've been watching Regis. He's been doing an amazing job on his IG recently, and he's really communicating with fans and people. He's doing a lot there, and I've really been watching it. One thing he talked about is something I didn't realize. He was talking about. He was like, first of all, I thought I won the fight. He's like, but I understand how it could. I didn't start fast enough, so I'm not mad at the decision. And he was like, I'm happy that he got the win in terms of Taylor. I'm happy that Taylor got the win that day because of everything Taylor went through during that time. And this is something I didn't know. His pops or his grandfather passed away right before the fight. His boy got beat up by Lomachenko the day before, the week before. And it was some other big thing. There was like 3 huge things that happened in his personal life. So he was coming in there with like, if he didn't win, we don't know. Like he might have just went down the rails. And that's what Regis Prograis was saying. So he was like, I honor that dude. I respect that dude. I hope I get an opportunity to have that fight again. But he was like, but if I lost to anybody under the circumstances, I'm glad it's him. Which once again, to me, shows why, dude, Regis Prograis is one of the good guys in the sport, man. I'm a fan of that dude.
He's definitely one of the good guys in the sport. I did not know that about Josh Taylor going into the first fight. 2 of the fights we mentioned were 2 of the best fights of last year. Those are Those are unification fights, examples of the best fighting the best. These guys, a lot of them, with the exception of Regis Prograis, I'm not sure how old Maurice Hooker is, but these are all still younger-ish guys in the sport. So if they continue to have fights at a high level like this, let's say later in their career when they do decide that they're going to move to 147, they have built a cult fan following regardless, and that is how you
absolutely.
This is going back a little bit, but going back to the beef that I care about most. Yeah, I only care about them because these guys will fight. These guys have said we were going to fight already, and they had a date. These other guys, bruh, no, miss me with all that cap. You got Al Heyman fighters fighting nobody. He's taking tune-up after tune-up. And, I mean, these guys beef with each other. If Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford are going to tweet back and forth and, cool. But, like, we don't even know when that fight's going to happen. We definitely don't expect Jermell Charlo to be fighting Terrence Crawford anytime soon. So, aside from that, you just wasting my time.
Facts.
Manny Pacquiao, yeah, you're a nice guy. Like, it's not even fun to watch Pacquiao talk shit.
Especially not with Mikey Garcia. That's not the beef that I want. So, here's the thing. In terms of the beefs and shit, like, the Jermell Charlo and with Jermell and what's his name and Crawford, I don't even care about that one because I don't see that fight happening just yet. Now, it's interesting because Terrence Crawford has talked about skipping 147 if he can't get fights and actually fighting at 54. So that's the only reason that fight is a possibility. Especially because that's a fight that could possibly happen in 2021. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to happen anytime soon. It's not the realistic. They're not even in the same weight class. But
not even that. It's the same situation as Errol Spence.
Facts. But here's the thing. And Errol Spence is interesting to me. Dude, it's literally the exact same situation as this. They're teammates. They train at the same fucking gym. They got the same managers. It's exactly the same thing. Now, one thing I find interesting with Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. Errol Spence has come out and they've been showing things recently. Errol was trying to get that fight. And it's funny because Terrence Crawford's team is always like, nah, he's not, no, he's not. They put out some shit recently, and I think it's both. I think the fighters themselves want to fight each other. I don't think it's anything to do with those guys specifically. Those are two of the top 5 pound-for-pound guys in the world. Now, I don't know if you've been able to see this. Yo, did you see Shakur Stevenson's top 10 pound-for-pound?
Did not.
Bro, Shakur Stevenson's top 10 pound-for-pound. He has Errol Spence at 6. He has it's all over the place. You just guess who he has at number 1.
Terrence Crawford.
Of course. That's his big brother.
That's his boy.
That's his big brother, man. You know, that's his guy. Hey, real quick, Kenny Stevenson, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, man. Listening to the pod, I appreciate you, brother. And of course, Tasha, the first lady of the Fight Podcast. Hello, baby. Have to give some shout outs to individuals who are paying to join us today.
Of course, I'm trying to find this Shakur Stevenson tweet.
It's on his IG.
But,
yeah. All right, so moving on, man. The beefs you're not with, man. But here's another big beef that I think is really important, especially in terms of the layout of.
But like, can they stop though?
I mean,
like,
here's the thing, man. In
just
terms of boxing, I'm here for the shit, and the reason I'm here for this shit now is because in boxing, at least in MMA, we're figuring out what fights are happening, if something's gonna happen next, and there's drama and shit going on with that. Boxing, there's nothing. So at the end
it's
of
just
the
not
day,
believable.
Well, you know what? But here's the thing. That's the beautiful thing about combat sports, man. And there's a reason that we're fans of it, man. The reason that we're fans of this shit and the reason that we love this as much as we do, because guess what, man? This is a grown man soap opera. We love the storylines. We love the beef. I'm here for all this shit. I'm here for it. Do I think it's silly sometimes? Yes. Do I think it's not realistic sometimes? Of course. Is it any less entertaining? Fuck out of here. That shit is amazing. So let it ride. Let's keep having this beef.
You're not less entertained due to the fact that we're in quarantine and we don't have anything coming up. Like them arguing is literally just.
I don't care because here's the thing.
I care. I think it's so fucking petty.
It is petty, and that's what I love about that shit. Let it be petty. Let them talk some trash. You are Mr. Wrestling. You're supposed to love this shit. You're supposed to love this extra nonsense.
Wrestling is essential.
All right, man. Well, moving right along, man. We're gonna keep talking about this beef. And somebody that you and I respect a lot, man. Dan Raphael of ESPN is no longer of ESPN. Yo, he got shit canned by the organization. Came out and said this, and we don't have that much time left in the show today, so I want to rifle through a couple of these last ones. Dan Raphael has been an important part of the boxing coverage for almost 2 decades, and we can thank him for the many contributions he made to the coverage of the sport during that time. We wish him success in his next chapter. That was from ESPN. Bro, I hear that there's beef between him and Top Rank. That's the reason this ended up falling out. But I personally believe this is a big loss for ESPN. He is synonymous with ESPN in boxing. The fact that he is gone, I think, is going to be a loss to them. I think he's one of the best writers in the game. And I'm really surprised that they made this move.
So I hired. His contract was last renewed actually around this time in April of 2018 when ESPN had announced that they had agreed to a multi-year extension for him. So it seems as though and he confirmed that, and it sounds like ESPN is on the same side, that he reached the end of his contract and they just decided not to renew him. Now, to your point, there are rumors about his relationship with Top Rank, who obviously ESPN is in pretty deep with. But I think this is a big loss for ESPN, but in the grand scheme of things, we probably won't notice it. Dan Raphael is a talent in his field in terms of writing and journalism, and I think he's probably a little bit more than he is as like a broadcast journalist. But I mean, great writers like that are rare in this day and age, and I do think he'll always have a place in terms of boxing media. So I would love to see more of him. I'm interested to see once COVID quarantine lifts where he falls at. But right now, he seems to be kicking it with his family just like everybody else, and he will be back. I guarantee that we have not seen the last of Dan Raphael, and I'm excited to see more from him. Definitely a huge loss at ESPN.
Absolutely, man.
And he also mentioned that he was the highest paid person in that department. I'm not sure what highest paid, like what department he's referring to, because like I can't imagine he has a higher payroll than, let's say, an Andre Ward. But I'm interested. We'll see what happens.
No, I agree, man. We'll see what ends up happening. I'm really interested to see what ends up going on with that one there. All right, moving right
He,
along. What was
I'll say
that?
this. He mentioned that COVID-19, like he said, it was like a perfect storm. It wasn't the cause, but it definitely didn't help.
Okay.
Because ESPN is like cutting down a salary. Stephen
Yeah,
A. Smith
yeah.
taking a salary reduction. Just sort of a perfect storm.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens with that one, man. Which brings me to my last boxing a little tidbit today, and and with COVID and everything going on with the quarantine, you brought this up, and I'm going to open the floor to you for this. Where do you see the future of the sport going? It's been crazy in term we haven't seen it. It seems like at minimum to fall 2021, we're not going to have any fans in these arenas. How do you feel the growth of the sport, and how do you feel the future of the sport is going to end up being within the next 5 years?
Well, immediately coming back, I think you're going to see the sport experiment in ways that they haven't had to experiment before. I think coming back, we will have a loaded schedule with tons of big events that had to be pushed back for whatever reason, fighting for TV time. So boxing isn't going to be bigger than the NBA. It's not going to be bigger than the NFL. There's certain things that naturally, unless you're talking about the biggest fights in the world, that boxing is just going to naturally take a back seat to. And I understand that. So finding creative time slots to show these things, different days of the week, we're going to have to get used to that when things first come back. But also, we that you thought you can get fighting scrubs that you thought would always be there, those are no longer there. And now you have great fighters that, we don't know how long this can last, or they're losing a little bit of their prime.
Absolutely.
These guys had fights lined up, some big fights, some not as big, but these guys have had fights lined up. We didn't really get a lot of big fights the first few months of the year. And this is just how boxing can be. And I think this can be a bit of a reality check for all the athletes in the sport, that the time is now, letting things marinate and trying to wait to make fights happen. Things aren't guaranteed.
Thanks.
And you need to make that happen. Also, the name that I've seen them calling this is the Great Lockdown, like the Great Depression. These are the worst times that we've been in since then, even way worse than we were in '08. They're calling it the Great Lockdown. And I think the lapse in the economy will also apply as a correction to how athletes were being paid in boxing. And if they can correct how athletes are being paid in boxing, they'll have a lot more realistic expectations, and they'll be way more willing to take the bigger fights and not such astronomical fees as they were being paid before. Because I think we look at the market, and the market was probably a bit out of whack. The market probably got the furthest out of whack that it's been when, like, Danny Jacobs made $10 million by Canelo.
Have you seen Jamal Charlo's crib? He did a thing on
I've been seeing the articles. I didn't actually watch it though.
Dude, you know how I feel about the Charlos. You can tell the world how I feel about the Charlos. I hold them in high regard.
Big Charlo guy.
Big Charlo guy.
Matter of fact, the fight I'll watch this week is Jamel and Tony Harrison
Great fight. I watched it again about a week ago, and whew, that was a fight. But, bro, you ain't fought nobody good enough to have a crib that big. Like, yo, come on, son. Like, that shit. Yo, he was out here living in a museum, yo. He out here legit. This motherfucker got a DeLorean in his living room.
I did see that.
Nigga.
I did see that.
What the fuck? Like,
Sergio, we just spoke about
dog.
this. Al Heyman guy. Al
Heyman, sign me, sir. Please. Holy shit, man. It's nuts. All right, man. Well, we
and he ain't tripping about fighting either. He in quarantine. He probably set forever.
If I had a museum like that with a DeLorean in the front living room, in the foyer, you know I'm gonna be chill.
And nice looking dogs.
Beautiful dogs, looking healthy and trained. This cat, man. Oh, man, I saw that. Look, I am not. You know me. I am by no stretch a hater. But I saw that. I'm like, yo, who the hell you fought, bro? Like, Erickson Lubin was not that nice. Like, I am not rocking with that.
Yeah, Erickson Lubin, couple fights against Tony Harrison, but Al Heyman, he's about his fighters.
He is, man. But all right, here, let's move on, man. Because we got hit.
He's also in Texas.
He is in Texas, and houses are like $13 out there.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about some music, man. Yo, with everything coming up, like I said, talk about a little bit of culture. Will you be watching the 10-part Michael Jordan Last Dance series on ESPN coming out on Sunday the 19th?
I thought it was Netflix.
No, it's on ESPN.
Either way, I didn't really know about it until a couple days ago. But anything sports related that everybody's going to be watching, I'll probably be watching. I'll also be watching episode 2 of Insecure.
I will too. I will
Just
too. Now, granted, that first episode I wasn't that fond of. Not gonna. I don't.
whoa,
I don't know how I feel about her with the fat dude.
I was
You know.
that was great.
All right, I'm gonna go back and watch it. I am.
I love the first episode. I was screaming at the TV. I thought it was hilarious.
Oh no,
Like the
I
moment
giggle
when
my ass off. Don't get it twisted. But I'm just like, come on, man. Y'all trying to do too much, man. What's up? What's up with that?
that shit was funny. That was hilarious.
I
'Cause
did laugh when my
he's
man was in the background when he was like holding the door down. Like that was funny. Like, dude is good.
So he a fat guy, but like he supports her. He provides security at her event
You know
her
what,
event for
brother?
free.
You
He bring
right.
her weed and liquor.
You know
But
what?
he-
That
but
is
he
a
got-
good dude. Anybody who brings you weed and liquor, you know, you need to keep that one around.
And let me tell you, he got fat shamed all over Twitter. We don't talk about fat shaming in the same sense.
And he trying to do us dirty, bro.
He got fat
He
shamed
did
for no
get fat
reason.
shamed, and I was in the boat. I apologize to my brother, so I ain't gonna go that route. All right, I'm gonna be watching Insecure. I actually enjoy the show. I don't think they act very good in that show, but the show itself is here for the culture, so I love it.
It's the culture,
It's
not
not
for
for
the
the acting. It's
acting.
for the culture. I'm here for that. Anything else you gonna be watching?
What will I be watching? Right now, I started Money Heist, per the request of like
I haven't seen
everybody.
it yet. I'll check it out.
I finished season 3 of Ozark. Oh, I just find the Innocent Files. I love me some true crime. Netflix just dropped a new docu-series called The Innocent Files. If you want to get mad about people that were wrongly accused and stuff, a lot of black people, of course. But that's a great show to watch. But in terms of music, I wanted to make sure I could give a big shout out to West Side Gun.
Ooh, yes.
You know, I feel about Griselda on here, but that Pray for Paris is that's a solid album. My man's
Griselda,
beat
bro.
coronavirus and dropped the album in the same week.
bro. Look, and shout out to all the Griselda clan, man. You know I like Griselda when I'm sitting here with my lady and we're putting on music on her playlist. I was like, yo, download Griselda. Download Griselda.
Oh, definitely. And you know how I feel about Freddie Gibbs. I had no idea he was going to be on the album.
I got another one. Hey,
Man.
I'm sitting here chilling. I'm listening to my lady's playlist, and we're just kind of vibing to music. And she loves music and has great music, like I do. I'm sitting here chilling, man. Out of nowhere, all of a sudden, Freddie Gibbs is going on my lady's playlist. I was like, oh shit! All right, that was my conversation with Brandon B. Camille. Yo, my hair looks nuts right now. I did that for y'all. But great conversation, man. That's my boy. And yo, we have so much more coming today. We have Hassan Hyder from American Top Team coming on later on, and so much more. Love you guys. This has been Serg, Vicente of the Fight Podcast, the greatest combat sports culture show in the entire universe. Thank you for listening.